Welcome to the Today Counts show. Today does count because it impacts, it influences your tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. The Today Counts podcast is sponsored by the generous donors of the Lead Today community. I'm your host, Tim Piper. Hey, welcome back, everybody, again to the Today Counts show. I have a special guest with me today, Mr. Jackson Hewitt. He has quite a colorful business past, and I look forward to getting to know him a little bit better here and his story. John, welcome to the Today Counts show, and thanks for joining us.
Jim, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey, I got to start off. I noticed, so I did some snooping around and some Googling, as we say nowadays. I guess in the old days, I had gone to the library or something, to do some research or the newspaper or what have you. And I noticed that you were born in Detroit, Michigan, but you moved, if I got this right, to New York somewhere early on in your childhood. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born, my father was a student at Michigan State, and both my parents were from Detroit. I was born in the summer between his freshman year and sophomore year, and they were home in Detroit, so I was born in Detroit.
Okay. So where do are you a sports fan? Do you get involved?
Yeah, I am. I grew up in upstate New York. I lived in Lansing, Michigan, at Michigan State for the first 4 years of my life. When I was 5, I moved to upstate New York. So all my sports teams are New York teams. I grew up when I was a kid. I mean, I'm so old that they didn't have TV except for the World Series back then. And my favorite teams are the New York Yankees, the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Sabres.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, John, that's where we have to part ways. So I was born in San Diego, but that's because my dad was in the Navy, and our family came over from Cornwall, England, and we settled in the Detroit area. So I'm a Tiger fan, a Lion fan, a Wolverine, and I just hate the Yankees.
You know what? There are certainly more Yankee haters than lovers.
That's probably true. That's probably true. I didn't introduce you properly. You are the co-founder of Jackson Hewitt. Anybody that's had their eyeballs open and their ears opened has heard of Jackson Hewitt, and they've probably also heard of Liberty Tax Service. And as I understand, you're the co-founder of Jackson Hewitt. Hewitt, of course, your last name, and then the founder of Liberty Tax Service. When I did some research, it looks like you kind of began as a what's it called, tax preparer, and then
Correct.
So pick up the story from there.
Yeah, I'll take you all the way back to the beginning, 54 years ago.
Let's do it.
I started while I was at the University of Buffalo, working part-time for H&R Block. Loved it. 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. And my dad was a CFO of a public company, an accountant, and he had bought one of the first Apple computers by mail in the 70s. And he liked the little Apple better than the mainframe that was running his public company. So he decided that he and I should build tax software for this little Apple computer. So we both quit our jobs in 1981, and we built the first tax software for an Apple computer. No one wanted it, way ahead of its time. There weren't even 100,000 PCs in the country and desktops. So got lucky and found a company in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. Mel had died. We bought 6 offices from his widow. We merged the computer company and Mel Jackson. We changed the name to Jackson Hewitt. We went public and sold it for $483 million. And 15 years later,
in 1997, correct?
correct, 15 years later.
Yeah.
And It went on to be $1 billion company today with 6,000 locations. And so now once I sold it, I had a 3-year non-compete, but it didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt didn't have any offices in Canada. So we opened Liberty Tax in Canada, and within 3 years became a top 100 retail firm. So now I built one of the top 100 franchise chains in the United States and one of the top 100 in Canada. When my non-compete ended in 2000, we brought Liberty Tax to the United States. And now I had to compete against my own name and my own software and my own system at Jackson Hewitt. And yet, not only did we grow faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than Jackson Hewitt and H&R Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years. Top 10 fastest growing franchisor ever. Again, my second public company, worth $500 million. And again, I sold my stock. And now I founded Loyalty Brands. And unlike the previous two companies where I just had one franchisor, we have 10 different franchisors at Loyalty Brands. So that's my 54-year career in a nutshell.
I've got tons of questions. Are you ready?
Ready.
I would imagine that, at least in the beginning, it sounds like your business model was based on software, training, comp plan for those working for you, and then the physical space needed in order for the people to meet as kind of like your four building blocks. Am I missing something there?
I'm sure I'd have to think about what you just said, but there's a lot of things that go into building a national brand from essentially nothing. We started with 6 offices in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and built a national brand with 6,000 locations.
Right.
So there's lots of pillars to that. To me, it comes down to you have to have a system of doing business, and then you have to have the right people operating that system. So I would say 2 critical components.
Yeah, very good. I just start writing down some things that I, forgot about, just zipping through, what I perceived to be those building blocks. I wrote down, attorneys, at least in the beginning, sales, which of course is a microcosm of marketing, and then the systems that you mentioned, and not just hiring people and training them, but making sure you got the right people that have the right temperament for your brand, what you're trying to convey. So you must have had somebody almost living out of a suitcase in some ways, in some regions, in your expanding. Was that you? Was that somebody else? How'd you do that?
I've done a lot of travel in my career, and in fact, now I'm traveling more than ever. But yeah, I spent a lot of time visiting potential franchisees and existing franchisees all over the United States and Canada. So I'm on the road probably 120 days a year, and on hundreds of airplanes and hundreds of nights in hotels. The most surprising thing to me was many years ago when I was awarded the gold member at Hertz. And that meant I had rented 50 cars a year. So, and there's some cities I'd never rented a car, like New York and Las Vegas. And so I said, boy, I'm visiting a lot of cities. So out of the top 100 cities in the United States in population, I visited 99 of them.
So you must have a temperament for that. You must have agility maybe, and kind of enjoy being on the move. In your business model, did they start off as locations that are simply an extension of your company, or did you start off with a franchise model right away?
The second in my book, iCompete, I talk about the second. I talk a lot about the mistakes that I made. And the second biggest mistake I made when we bought Mel Jackson, our goal we had 6 locations, and H&R Block had 9,000. And our goal was very audacious, big, hairy, audacious goal
Right.
to have 9,001 locations. So from the beginning, when we bought it in August 14th of 1982, that was our goal, is to be bigger than Block. Well, I bought the 6 locations. By January, we had 11. By the 2nd January, we had 15. And by the 3rd January, 2.5 years later, we had 22. Now, that's pretty good growth from in 2.5 years to go from 6 locations to 11, 15, 22. But I realized if we're going to get to 9,000, I'm going to be like 9,000 years old by the time we get there. So we got to do something different. So we immediately, in 1985, I realized that this isn't going to work. We're going to need to change something. And the obvious change was franchising. So we immediately started franchising and then grew exponentially. And that's why today we started franchising with 22 locations, company stores. Now, Jackson Hewitt has 6,000 locations, almost all franchised.
This is great. I've got a lot of questions for you, but before maybe we continue down this vein, could we back up a minute and talk about John Hewitt? Who is he? I mean, I only introduced you as being born in Detroit and growing up in New
Right.
York, but who is he as a person? What?
There's several things about me that I think are have enabled several blessings I have that have enabled me to have such incredible success. And it's truly not. I mean, I'm blessed, not something I did, but one of my blessings and most important is that in meeting people, when I brought in over 5,200 franchisees and thousands of employees, and they had hundreds of and thousands of employees. And my goal with every person I meet is to do what's best for that person. So when it's good for me too, that's great. But if someone, an employee or a potential franchisee or a franchisee, wants to go out on their own and do something different, God bless them. I mean, life's too short. So I think one of the differences between me and normal people is that I always want what's best for the other person, and I've lived my life that way. Another thing is, in there was, I think it was Kathy Lee Gifford wrote a book, and in the book, one of her chapters was called "The Age of Bliss," and she says that in this chapter that when you're a small child, 4, 5, 6, 7, you think you can do anything. You can be Batman, you can be Superman, you can be President of the United States, you can be an astronaut, you could be a professional baseball player. You can do anything. And then as you get to be 7, 8, 9 years old, people start saying, nah, you can't do that. I mean, it's not only your enemies, if you have enemies, but your friends and your teachers and your parents say you can't do that because of this. And so this in her book, she's explaining to adults, you need to get back into that age of bliss. And I realized that when I heard her on the radio 15 years ago talking about that chapter, I realized one of the differences between me and normal people, they never knocked me out of that. I was always cocky enough to think I could do anything. So I have an enormous self-confidence level. It may be perceived as cocky. I mean, my oldest son, I say, son, you're just as cocky as me, but son, I've earned it. So when I was a teenager, I was cocky. Today, I'm proven. It has to go down. But you have to have a somewhat cocky, positive view of the future, or you can't achieve great things. If you can't see a great future, you're not going to get a great future. If you see a mundane future or a negative future, you cannot achieve greatness. So the highest achievers have set the highest goals. Not everyone that sets high goals is a high achiever, but no one that sets low goals is a high achiever.
That's good. That's real good. Now, when I talk to people and I hear them use the word blessings, and then you throw Kathy Lee Gifford into it, it tips me off that this is I'm talking to a person of some sort of faith. Where are you at in the whole
Yeah,
world of?
I'm a Christian and proud of it, and I give God all the glory for all the success I've been given.
Great. Well, I wanted to establish that. I just know who I'm talking to. Can you repeat what you said about high achievers setting high goals?
Yeah, the highest achievers, the most successful people ever, have set audacious goals, and you're not always going to meet your goals, but you're not going to. It's better to set a high goal and fall short than set a low goal and meet it. So I think it's essential that we do all we can do. I mean, my the biggest waste of talent in human beings is not reaching for the stars when they're capable of achieving great things. So I hate to see people I hate it that everyone doesn't reach for all they're capable of. My favorite story in the Bible is the talent story, where God shows that you have to you have to utilize your talent. That's why you have talent. When I was, I've faced adversity in my career. Of course, no one gets to skate. We all face adversity, and my son gave me a great poster in 1995 in a particularly challenging year. He said, "Success is based on obstacles overcome, not heights achieved." So everyone's going to be faced with obstacles, but we each need to be all that we can be. Life's too short.
That's great. While you were talking, I was just I have this weird ability when you give me a word, all of a sudden a paragraph or two just kind of explodes in my brain. And I was thinking about high achievers and the people that I get to coach and work with around the nation, whether they're pastors or whether they're business owners or whether they're athletes or whether they're corporate athletes. That's how I view corporate America. If you want to be successful, you got to see yourself, as an athlete. But I just quickly wrote down four things: faith, energy, confidence, tenacity. And you mentioned, some of your favorite Bible story. I would say that mine, which is also a very popular one, would be just the life of Joseph. And he definitely exuded these things. He was a little immature in the beginning, got himself in trouble, right? It didn't give his brothers the right to do what they did to him, throwing him in the pit, selling him off, lying about his death, his perceived death. But the guy had faith, the guy had energy, the guy had confidence, tenacity. I guess, he also had a good measure of humility, when I think about it, because his ability to interpret dreams, he made sure that people knew that wasn't his ability. It was the ability that was given to him by God, which is pretty cool, right? Well, let's talk about iCompete. What brought you to writing that book and walk through it with us?
Yeah, my goal in life since I started in business, well, it changed. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, I was cocky enough to believe that I was going to get rich, and I thought, like any immature kid might think, I said, "I'll just make a few $1 million and retire and have fun."
Yeah.
And then I realized in the journey of producing wealth, and I've created 1,000 millionaires, so I've helped a lot of people. I learned that the journey is the joy,
It is.
not the treasure at the
Destination.
end of the
Yeah.
rainbow
Yeah.
is just anticlimactic.
Yeah.
And I've lived my life to change and help people.
Yeah.
And that's why at 74 years old, I'm still going on. They got to kill me to stop me because, most people want to retire. And God bless them. That. If that's right for them, that's right for them. But right now, I feel I'm at the pinnacle of my knowledge and experience and wisdom and ability to guide and help more people. And if I go sit on the beach somewhere, then what a waste that is. And so it's I have this compulsion to change the world, make it a better place, help people. Everyone I meet, I try to do more for them than they do for me, and I try to. And I'm almost sometimes I can be obnoxious about it. If I meet you and we're just talking, and you're a very obviously you're a very successful individual. If you say something that I think could be improved, I'm going to raise my hand and say, maybe you might think about this instead of that,
Yeah.
even though you're successful. And I'm always trying to, I'm brutally frank, always trying to change the people and give them a destination journey guide to where they can get to be.
Yeah, your story of the journey, learning that the journey is where the joy is at, reminded me way back into my wrestling days when, I won my first wrestling championship, small potatoes. It was a regional championship, but I remember after that final match, and I was walking off the mat, and coach hugged me, saw my parents, waved to them in the stands, all that good stuff. Big name on campus, what have you. But there was this weird feeling that came after, like, okay, now what? Right now what? And that's really not the point. And so, to your point, what I do remember the most is thinking about that kid that was ahead of me in the weight class that I thought I could never beat that guy because he just spanks me all over the place. But slowly but surely, I just kept on coming. And I think it's a great message. Retirement. That's you and I are connecting right there. I wouldn't even know what that looks like. I wouldn't know. Even in my retirement, I'd have to be creating trouble somewhere. Doing something. I'd be going down the latest Walmart, or closest Walmart, and saying, "Guys, we can do better. Let's do this." Or whatever that is. But anyway, we're on the road to iCompete. Let's continue to talk about your tenants in there.
Sure. Let me interrupt in that thought and say that I had dinner with one of my favorite employees, and his wife is a franchisee at Liberty Tax still on Saturday. And he told me that is going to be inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Really?
His next year. His name is John Taylor. He was a captain of the boat on a submarine. He worked for me for over 20 years at Liberty.
Wow.
And he in the middle of working for me at Liberty, he decided he was over 50 years old and decided that he was going to try to make the Olympics. And
That's awesome.
in researching it, not anyone over, I forget the age, over 37, something like that, had
Yeah.
ever wrestled in the Olympics.
I mean,
But he
35 is an old man in any
right.
sport. Yeah.
Right, whatever the age was.
Yeah.
But he decided he went, so he left his job at Liberty took a sabbatical for about 3 years and trained for the Olympics. Now, of course, he didn't make the team, but he went on to go to the World Championships for over 50
Oh,
or
wow.
over 55, and he
Yeah.
finished third. And then
Fantastic.
2 years in some European country, and then 2 years later he finished third again. And he's a friend of and mentor of Tom Ryan, the coach at Ohio State, where the Olympic Wrestling Center is
Yes.
headquartered and based. And he helped Tom Ryan coach. They won the national championship about 7 or 8 years ago. So I remember him getting on his bike that didn't have three speeds and going all the way from Virginia Beach to Ohio State to work out on the way, and helping Tom Ryan coach a team that turned into be the NCAA championship.
And
So yeah,
yeah, and the value he must have been able to add is, immeasurable. Because he's just
right,
not talking about the old days. He's living it even then.
right,
It's
right.
fantastic.
So yeah, I live to compete, and everything I do is a competition. And whether if we're having an argument, then I was watching the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, and they were playing the Eagles, the number one ranked team in football, and um, my youngest son was arguing with me about the game, and he said, I bet you Josh Allen throws more picks than touchdowns. So I bet him $1, and I'll bet $1 on anything, right? And so fortunately, I won. He threw 2 touchdowns and only 1 interception. But everything's a competition with me.
Yeah, I believe Josh.
And that's
Yeah,
why the name of the book.
yeah. In that particular game, I believe he earned over 50 fantasy points too, which is that's crazy. That's a crazy amount of points.
Yeah,
So
over 500 yards.
yeah,
He ran for 2 touchdowns,
yeah,
and they were unluckily got
yeah,
beat.
yeah.
They got tied with a 59-yard field goal.
In the rain,
Amazing.
in
In the pouring rain. In the pouring
outdoors,
right,
outdoors in the rain and cold, and they had
right,
been out there all day fighting. Yeah,
right.
yeah. Even did you see the replays where the quarterback and the center, I forget his Kelsey, the
Yep.
center and the quarterback after they had cameras on both of them, and when that ball went through, they both just shook their head like, "That's incredible. That's
Right.
incredible." Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it looked like he could have kicked it 70 yards. It easily cleared.
Yeah. Well, and when you make that kind of a field goal in that kind of situation, you just got some mojo going and you're probably going to win that game. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Buffalo's a good team. That they're not out of it yet, but it's a tough year. It's a tough year.
Yeah, and the Yankees, much to your pleasure, had a horrific year. They barely made 500. It would have been the first time in something like 21 years they didn't win more games than they lost.
Well, all in fun, all in fun. My two brothers and I, just on a whim, with no explanation, we'll look at our phone. A notification will go off. This happens 2 or 3 times a year, no apparent reason. We get a text, and it may be from my brother, and it'll say "Yankees stink." Oh gosh. Well, John, it's a blessing hearing you talk about your philosophy of life. I love this idea of competing, but I'm trying to extract some of the mentoring that you're doing through the book. I compete. Mentor us in leadership. Mentor us in what you've learned. You said that the second biggest mistake you made, and you talked about how your vision was big, but your strategy really didn't match your vision, and so you changed your strategy to franchising, which exponentially, blew the roof off of where you were going. So. Is that how your book is put together? Learning from the mistakes that you've made? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it has way more mistakes than the average book,
Yeah,
and it talks about how I overcame them and changed.
yeah,
Because you know people that are the most successful made the most mistakes.
right.
They're not more successful because they made the least mistakes. They're more successful because they made the most mistakes. If you're not making a mistake, you're not doing anything, right? You can't. You have to tread on ground on that no one has ever tread on, right? You have to set sail in a different direction than anyone's gone, and so you have to do things differently. And otherwise, you're just going to be normal and average, and which to me would be the biggest insult. If you ever said I'm normal or average or typical, or you know someone like me, that would be insulting because I walk the tightrope of crazy, right? When you set out with 6 stores and your opponent has 9,000, and you say that you're going to build to more than 9,000, you're either an idiot or insane. I mean, no, I mean that's virtually impossible. And yet today, Jackson Hewitt has 6,000 locations, and Liberty got to 4,000 locations. So between the two, I beat Block 10,000 to their 9,000. Because today, that was August of '82. Today in 2023, they still have only 9,000 offices. And one of the reasons they didn't grow with the population is because of the two companies that I built that have grown faster than they have at Jackson Hewitt and Liberty. And now my newest company, ATAX, is in that industry, is the fastest growing in the industry. But to be successful, you have to have differentiators. You know, if David had gone onto the field with the same sword and shield and armor as Goliath, there would never be a David and Goliath story. He'd be the 187th guy killed by Goliath.
Yeah, what do you think keeps people from? I think a lot of people, if you were speaking to a live audience, I think a lot of people would be nodding their head, forward like I am right now, but they still won't leave actually executing that. What do you think keeps people from being comfortable with making mistakes? And versus just kind of playing it safe. What's the disconnect there?
Yeah, it's hard for me to understand that. When you ask me, you're asking something opposite of my psyche,
Yeah,
right?
right.
I'm a risk taker. I make mistakes. I go for big victories and huge challenges. And so to identify with someone that is afraid to leave their secure job, and they love working for the government or for a union so they can't get fired, and they love the security. They don't want to think about work after 5 o'clock at night. I just want to go and do my 8 hours and go home
Yeah.
and don't have to worry about it. That is so foreign to me. I can't. I can't. You can't ask me to get into the mind of those people, but I can assure you that God wants you to be the best that you can be, and if you're just He's like in the talent story, the servant that buried
Buried
he
it. Yeah.
buried the talent in the ground, and here I saved it for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, too many people are burying their talent in the ground, and not getting out there and enjoying life as they should, and changing the world as they can.
Yeah, that's good. So I think the moral of the story is that we both know through observation that there is a sector, even though they're fans and they're shaking their head, yes, they're just not going to do it. But what you are able to do is you're able to encourage those who are newer, those that are younger, those that want to, and they're being encouraged by your words that it's going to be okay. If you fumble the ball, it happens. You're just going to learn how to hold on to it better, or you're going to learn this or that, or, whatever, but you're not going to stop running. You're not going to stop hitting the hole. You don't know what's on the other side of the hole. I always find it funny when we criticize these running backs who fumble the ball after being hit by a linebacker. Well, they're coming through a hole, unless you've never played football. And you come through a hole, and most running backs are a lot smaller than the linemen that are fighting for a position. And you, frankly, are blindsided many times by a safety or a corner or a linebacker. And, it happens. So you learn, oh, that's why I do it this way. But I'm still going to keep hitting the hole. Still going to keep hitting the hole, right? So that's powerful. Well, let's talk about give me an example of some of your mistakes besides the strategy mistake that you made. I have a funny feeling you have quite a bag of them.
I do. One of the and this is less of a mistake than a misunderstanding.
Okay.
That when I was a kid, when I was young, for the first 35 years of my career or life, they said customers number one, customers number one. And so in the mission statement of Jackson Hewitt, we set the mission statement as winning customers for life. And not long after that, Herb Kelleher wrote a book about Southwest Airlines called Nuts, Nuts, right? Because they're a bit nuts. They certainly were in the 90s
Right.
and when he wrote the book. And he said, no, no, no. If you want your customers to be treated as number one, you have to treat your employees as number one. And so we I had always treated employees well. Remember, I'm always trying to do what's best for other people.
Right.
But it hadn't occurred to me as plain as day that I had been doing the right thing, treating employees well, but I've been focusing on the wrong customer. If I don't treat my employees well, then they're not going to treat the customers well. And so it starts internally before you go to the customers. And so that was a lesson learned. And so in our mission statement now at Loyalty Brands, it's having fun, improving lives. And the way we came up with that is twofold. Number one is my belief is it's not thank God it's Friday. To me, it's thank God it's Monday. And if on Monday morning you're going to work and you're not looking forward to it, you're going to the wrong place. And so it's life's too short. You have to have fun. And so it starts with having fun. And then in the way we got to the second part of the mission statement was one of my authors, Stan Phelps, that has written a bunch of books, and he's been a keynote speaker and one of my favorites. In one of his books, he said, when you go to a meeting or a party or an event, you never arrive exactly on time. Let's say it's supposed to start at 9 a.m. You're either before 9 a.m. or after 9 a.m. Almost no one comes right exactly on time at the strike of 9, right? And so he said, in the same way with customers, you never meet a customer's expectation. You either exceed their expectation or fail to meet it. So I chose that as our mantra that different from any other company that I know, our goal is to exceed a higher percentage of customers' expectations, a higher and higher percentage. So we started out having a mission statement of changing, and then of changing, and then we said no, improving. So we have to have fun, improving lives. And so I learned that's the ultimate success is exceeding a higher level of customers' expectation, a higher percentage of customers' expectation. And so that's how we measure our results each year. And we do something novel that almost no company does. We call the customer. In virtually every industry, in every major company, they do surveys. They love surveys, right? You could be on the telephone. Could you stay on to answer it? They could send you an email. They could hand you a card. Everyone loves their surveys. Well, about the only people that fill out those surveys are people that are real unhappy or real happy, or have a lot of time on their hands. Most people don't fill out the surveys. So in each of our brands, we call the customers and ask them. And customers love to be called. They love to be asked. And just like in most industries, you call the customer, and most companies, over 90%, 95%, 98% are happy. And so they love the call, so they return more often. And we ask for a referral. I've learned in my my companies over my career, people are in general are not good at asking for referrals. So you get someone very personable on the phone who asks the customer, "Are you happy?" They say, "Jim, yep, I'm happy." And say, "Well, please recommend us to your friend." So
Beautiful.
those are differentiators, lessons learned.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to jump into that pool of differentiators also.
Sure.
I just got back from a road trip. We took 12 road hours. I put my wife in the car. We headed to Arizona for Thanksgiving from Texas. And when it came to refilling gas and taking care of a human need in the restroom, it was just a very constantly gross experience. If you go on I-25 North in Colorado and you get to, I believe it's Cheyenne, the crossroads between Cheyenne and Laramie, there's a highway there called Highway 80 that takes you into Salt Lake or whatever. There is a business there, a conglomerate of sorts, and they advertise on the highway and their billboards, cleanest restrooms in America. And I think it's called Little America. And and they are pretty clean. They do a really great job. And I remember thinking to myself, I said, it's amazing how many business leaders don't really think about the basic human needs. Anybody can sell a bottle of pop, but why are they going to stop and get that pop? As now I don't know if you've heard of Buc-ee's, but if you take a road trip in Buc-ee's, and I am not exaggerating, and what a funny conversation to have, right, about restrooms. The one thing you can count on every Buc-ee's, which is it's a massive truck stop, family stop. I mean, literally, I don't know, on some of the biggest Buc-ee's I've seen, I cannot count how many refueling stations there are. When you walk in, there is fresh food being prepared and baked. There is clothing, there is house decor, there's snacks, and there's all kinds of things. But that's not why you go. You go because you can count on clean restrooms for you and your family. And they're massive. I mean, get graphic here, but I mean, it's not unusual to see 50 urinals, to see 30 stalls, just incredible. And I thought to myself, really, if you're on the road, a differentiator is clean restrooms. If you provide clean restrooms, everything else you'll see everywhere else, but you'll buy it, from me. So I think that's a fantastic, great lesson. What is something that we can ask all of our listeners? What is your differentiator? Not just of your business, but you as a person. What makes you stand out? What is that, special talent? If we're going to send a pass into the corner of the end zone, we're looking for a Calvin Johnson kind of a guy. That was his secret sauce. Or speaking of the Eagles, one thing the Eagles seem to have down better than any other team right now is that darn quarterback sneak. You cannot stop those guys on the goal line. If they get on the goal line, it's over. It's rugby all over again, and you can't stop them. To me, that could be a differentiator that in a really tight game could make the difference between the Eagles, getting that Super Bowl, that they want versus somebody else, knocking them off. And you're saying having fun, improving lives. Thank God it's Monday. Those are powerful ideas, especially when you believe that you're helping others. You have lived a fascinating life, John, and I don't think you're done yet. If my math is right, you're in your 70s now. I don't know what the right thing is to call you or if it's even appropriate, but I know that you're a multimillionaire, and you are, as you said in the podcast, you have been in the business, or at least the outcome, the byproduct of your work is you've helped others become financially independent. As well, and that's a beautiful thing. You're a man of faith. What is your next? I'm looking at the clock, and I know you have a hard stop coming up here in just a couple minutes. So, what is your next big thing? What are you after right now?
Well, if the next big company is, I've learned, you know, when I was a kid, they said death and taxes were the two certainties of life. And so in 1969, I got into taxes. And then Dennis Waitley said about 35 years ago, he said, now there's a third certainty in life, there's change. And I believe that there's going to be massive change. There's been massive change in our lifetime, right? I mean, you can't imagine a world where I was a kid. They didn't have color TV. They didn't have.
Right.
I mean, they didn't. I mean, just let alone a computer, right? So things are changing. But recently, I've learned over the last 3 years, we acquired a mobile grooming company. And people are obsessive, compulsive, crazy about their pets. And everywhere we go in the country, we're booked right away. The minute we get our van on the road, we're booked 3 weeks in advance. People just love their pets. And it's amazing to me. And so we're looking at expanding right now. We're on our way by this time next year, we'll be the largest mobile grooming company in the country. And we're looking at adding other services such as things that fit naturally, like dog walking and pet sitting and stationary grooming locations and food. I think one company, what was it, Rover, was just taken private this week for $2.2 billion. And all they do is they have a website where it's sort of like Uber of dog walking and pet sitting,
Yeah.
right? You go and you pick you if you're in Virginia, if you're in Detroit, you go and you see all the people that could walk your dog and all the contractors that could walk your dog or sit for your dog. They're a $2.2 billion company. And again, they were just taken private, not even a public company anymore. So I love the pet. I'm fanatical about right now about the pet industry. Just in love with the pet industry.
John, how do people get your book in their hands?
All they have to do is send me an. It's available on Amazon, but I'll send you one for free if you just John at loyaltybrands.com.
Beautiful.
JOHN at loyaltybrands.com. We'll put a book in the mail to you immediately.
John, thank you so much for spending time with me today. And I would love to stay in touch and have you back in the near future. I think there's a whole lot more that we could talk about. So
love to expand on it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Jim.
If you're not part of the Lead Today community, let me invite you. Go to leadtodaycommunity.com. That's leadtodaycommunity.com and sign up for Monday Moments. It's a weekly email that will encourage your leadership. Again, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for telling a friend about the Today Counts show.